some of us do. It's up to you to say, so I guess I'll do. We gotta teach each other. We gotta teach each other. We gotta teach each other.
Thank you, Beverly and Mays. Teach each other. I do not own the rights to that song. Hello once again, and greetings and peace and love. My name, of course, is Oman Mila Nasir Kainde, and welcome once again to Critical Thinking and Common Sense. Today, I'd like to discuss an issue that affects all of us, everybody. Whether you are a hermit and stays in your home, or whether you are outgoing, or whether you indulge in these things or you don't. However you feel about these things I'm going to bring up, this issue, it does affect you because you are part of society and it affects society. The topic I want to discuss today is the so-called opioid crisis compared to what they call the crack epidemic. Crisis, epidemic. You have to understand the wordplay. Crisis. It infers some kind of drastic occurrence that is happening to society that needs attention. It needs to be helped because it's a crisis, such as a earthquake or a storm, flooding. It's a crisis. An epidemic, used in terms, something like a disease, something that needs to be eradicated. It's an epidemic. See, it's a negative connotation. You have to know how people use these words, how they influence you with the wording of certain things. Crisis, epidemic. Opioid, crack. And we both know the biggest difference in these two areas is the social makeup and the racial makeup in each area. This is not something I'm trying to create. It has been studied, and it's a well-known fact that opioids are becoming larger and larger in, you might want to call, blue-collar or low-income white communities. Just as crack cocaine was said to have grew and became larger in the African-American, Hispanic, or people of color communities. Let's call a duck a duck. Now, I want to give you a few points here, right here, before I get started on the heavy stuff. And as you already know how I do, I always try to bring some literature to give some substance and support and some validity to what I'm saying. Now, first of all, in 2010, this right here was repealed. It was repealed by Congress. And what it was they initially, when it comes to crack cocaine, they had in regular powder cocaine, they had a 100-to-1 ratio. Okay? To get the same 20 years sentence, you had to have 100 times more than a person who had, say if the person had 10% crack cocaine, they could get 20 years. You had to have 100 times that to get 20 years. If we have any type of common sense about what's going on, you know, in the entertainment industry or in the business industry, we've seen tons of movies and we've seen tons of news features, whatever, and you usually find powder cocaine within the people who can afford a little bit more, you know, to spend a little more money. And of course, you know, it's going to be mainly Europeans. Now, as you know, and hopefully you understand, when I make these segments, I don't attack anyone. I just use the data that's provided by our government. So anyway, They repealed that in 2010. So you had predominantly more people going to jail who used crack cocaine than the ones who were using powder cocaine or possessed it. People were getting 20 years for small amounts of crack cocaine. And they were getting fines or, you know, suspended sentences or probation, or maybe if they did get time, it was, you know, 1 year. The other guy, he had 2 rocks of cocaine, he got 20 years, you know. Okay, also, they had, this was repealed in 2010 also. It was a 5-year minimum sentence for simple possession of crack cocaine. 5 years. Now, that means if, say, little Cody, who's 19, or Jared, who's 24, he gets caught with a little $50 pack of cocaine, he's going to get a fine. He's going to get, you know, small things or whatever. $50 worth of cocaine, powder cocaine now. But if Ray Ray gets stopped, and he has, let's say, 3 what they call dime rocks, he could get 20 years. 20 years. Now, if he sold his, he can get $30. Now, if the other guy, the white guy, sold his, he can get $50. But he gets maybe, you know, 6 months or probation or a fine and gets to go home. Ray Ray is going to jail for at least 7 years, maybe. Okay, they repealed this also, the 18-1. Okay, they reduced the sentences for people who were locked up prior to this change. Okay, but it was still unfair. Okay, because seeing how crack is a reduced amount, what they did is this right here. They said, okay, you don't have to have 100-1. We're going to knock it down. In order to get the same time, you're going to have 18-1. But it still was unfair. It still was unfair. It doesn't matter. Now, these have been repealed. But I'm saying prior to 2010, people were going to jail, you know, for long sentences for merely possession. Because it was an epidemic. An epidemic. This right here also. What they did is they went retro. So people who had been locked up for 20 and 30 years for these small possessions, they received reduced sentences. Okay? Now, the ones who received reduced sentences earlier, that means if they were in there for like 3 or 4 years and they were given 20 years and they got reduced sentences that would allow them to get out in another 6 months to a year, the recidivism of them committing that same crime, the percentage went down. That means people did not go back and do it again because they were let out early. Quickly. Now, the people who were given reduced sentences after they had been in there 10, 15 years, they have become institutionalized. And the recidivism for them went up. All right. What the government didn't do was reduce sentences for all offenders. They picked the ones they wanted. And they left some people lingering in jail for 10, 15, 20 years for minor offenses. That's what I'm saying. That's what happened. Okay. What they need to do is reduce the sentences across the board. Just everybody, across the board. Yeah, everybody. That'll make it fair. Also, they need to reform the law to make it one-on-one. A 1-to-1. If you have $10 worth of cocaine and he has $10 worth of crack cocaine, same charge. That's what it should be. But it's not yet. Same charge. Now, I want to go over to another area right here. I want to discuss how the war on drugs is actually a war on poor people and mainly a war on people of color. Now, I'm going to read from this right here. This is called Sense and Nonsense About Crime, Drugs, and Communities by Samuel Walker. This right here. It says, as we argued in chapter 1, The war on drugs has had an enormous impact on U.S. society, on the criminal justice system, and on racial and ethnic minorities in particular. The number of persons arrested for drug offenses increased from 601,075 to 954 and 164 in 2011. 601,000 to 954,000, and now represents 12% of all arrests. An ACLU report found that between 2001 and 2010, 8 million people were arrested on marijuana charges. Marijuana, 8 million people. 80% of the arrests were for possession, and marijuana now accounts for 52% of all drug arrests. Drug offenses are an especially important factor at the federal level. In 2010, drug arrests represented about 29% of all arrests for federal crimes. Federal crimes, mind you. Persons convicted of drug offenses are the primary factor in the spectacular increase in the prison population, especially at the federal level. The number of people in state prisons for drug offenses skyrocketed from 19,000 in 1980 to 237,000 by 2011. People in federal prisons for drug offenses, meanwhile, rose from 4,700 to 94,600 in the same period. Listen to this right here. Many critics argue that racial minorities are the primary victims of the war on drugs. The National Criminal Justice Commission argued some years ago that we are on the verge of a social catastrophe because of the sheer number of African Americans behind bars. Many people believe that the predicted catastrophe has occurred. African Americans are treated more harshly at every stage of the criminal justice system, and the resulting cumulative disadvantage generates the enormous disparity between the percentage of African Americans in prison and their representation in the general population. Michael Tonry and Matthew Milisky, in a tone of despair, commented that the facts of the racial disparities in the criminal justice system have long been well known, but that little has changed. Outside of academics and liberal reformers, few people much notice or care. But we agree, but they agree and would only add that things have changed in recent years. They have gotten worse, particularly with regard to imprisonment in African Americans. So, what we have here now are police in certain states. They carry around these like EpiPens type things, and when people are overdosing, they are allowed to administer it and bring them back. We have people being, let's say, helped by giving second chances, giving programs. They get medical care, all these things. Another thing, I'll tell you something right here. That guy, 45, Trump. When Trump came into office, Trump declared opioid crisis as a public health emergency. Okay? Yeah, it's an emergency now. 115 people die every day from opioid use. He says the answer is to get really tough on the dealers. The people from blue ribbon, as he called them, blue ribbon communities are doing everything they can. Okay? Now, before, when it was crack, they blamed the African American community. But Trump comes in and says that the people in those communities are doing everything they can. It was a former congressman. His name is Patrick Kennedy. And he served on the White House opioid commission. And he says, I mean, this is just a mental health crisis of the first order. And this administration, speaking of Trump's, has done nothing so far. Well, Trump's answer was to, of course, let's throw money at it. Let's throw money at it. Let's help these people out. In fact, he said he was going to donate $100,000 to the Department of Health and Human Services from his own pay. Yeah, that's how much he cares about the crisis. Now, if you want to know more about the so quote-unquote crisis versus the epidemic, these books here are actually free. You can send for these through the government. You can send for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however you want to do it. And you can get with me later on. I will give you the address or the website to contact them. So this one here is substance abuse treatment and family therapy. This one here is substance abuse treatment addressing the specific needs of women. This one here is substance abuse treatment for adults in the criminal justice system. Also, I got these right here. All these were free. Free. Behavioral health services for people who are homeless and a treatment improvement protocol for improving cultural competence. Now, this one here deals with a lot of what I've been talking about, cultural competence, because everyone can't treat everyone. You know, part of the treatment for drugs and mental health is caring. And you can't just administer medicine and information if you don't care. So this supposed directs people how to have competence in a cultural environment that's not regularly their own. But anyway, I'm going to close it right there. And I want you to think about these things. I don't want you to think about these things with anger to the point where you use your voice to put people down. I don't want you to use this as a stick to beat someone over the head. I want you to use this information, hopefully some knowledge, to better inform yourself. So however you decide to attack the problem or deal with the issues, you will be more informed. Okay? When it comes to having conversations with people about certain topics, some people I refuse to talk to. I do. I refuse to argue with a stop sign because it'll never change. You won't turn green, okay? I'm not arguing with a stop sign. And like the guy, what's his name, Jay-Z said in the song, he said, be careful when you argue with a fool because from a distance people can't tell who is who. See, I'm not ready to sit down at the table with a guy who hates black people. I'm not ready to sit down at the table with a person who hates white people. I mean, anything that you got in your system that is negative, I don't want you putting it in my area. See, I don't deal with negative vibes. So now if you want to come to the table and we're going to talk about something to do, that's fine. But if you just want to sit there and tell me why you hate me, I don't need that because I don't care. I'm not doing that. I'm not going anywhere to no hall and sit down with a bunch of people who hate me or hate what I stand for before they left their house. We're going nowhere. You understand what I'm saying? If it's not constructive, I don't want any part of it. You can go up there and sit down with them cats and go back and forth with them all day. I'm not knocking it. I applaud people like, Angela Rye and Navarro and all of them people, Don Lemon. I applaud them. I love watching those things. They get paid for that. And even the ones who don't, they really believe in that. That's not part of my narrative. That's not part of my makeup. Now, I could go on Let It Rip. And I can sit there and discuss an issue, but it doesn't have to be, it's not going to be why you don't like me. I'm wasting my damn time. If I wanted to do that, if I was a single cat, I'd go to the club and I'd talk to every female that I want to talk to, and I'd sit with her and try to discuss for hours and hours why she don't like me. That's going to get me something, or somewhere. I might end up changing her mind and finding a lovely lady in my life. But talking to another adult, especially, we're going to discuss why you don't like me. You sound like a fool. You sound like a total fool. But anyway, I want you to think about this topic. And I'd like for you to do some thinking on it. And it's always good to do some reading on something. You can't go around just spewing things from the top of your head just because you think you know. Because you have to understand that everybody knows something. And don't knock anybody for not knowing what you once didn't know. You understand what I'm saying? And I want to close right now with this beautiful song that I love it. My friend Sonia, well, on Facebook it's Bay Sonia, she told me this would be a beautiful song for critical thinking and common sense. And I have to agree with her, because this song right here hits the nail on the head about what it should be all about. We should all try to teach each other. No one is above the other. No one has all the answers. You know, you might have a degree. You know, I have some degrees, you know. You might have more degrees than a thermometer. That doesn't make my argument less valid than yours, and it doesn't make yours less valid than mine. Okay? The important thing is that we can come together, we can teach each other, we can learn from each other, we can share ideas, we can share helpful hints, you know, direction. Oh, one more thing I want to say before we leave. I see a lot of these things coming up now about people going to certain places and getting refused service, and they won't let me eat here, they won't let me in there. Look, let me tell you right now. Stop that. Stop that. You sound like, you know, I'm not going to call you that. To me, it's like me coming to your house because you're having a birthday party or a party and everybody going in, but you tell me you don't want me at the party, and I get mad. And I want to start a fight. And I want to tell everybody, you're wrong, man. He wouldn't let me in the party. You see how that sounds? If you're not welcome, guess what? You're not welcome. Take your money somewhere else. You're fighting for the right that the government gave you to go where you want to go. I understand that. I understand that. But guess what? Fight for the right outside of the establishment. You can still do that. Once you go there and they say, no, thank you, I don't want you, you say, okay, and you leave. You document it, you leave, whatever. Don't stand up there at that door beating to get in where they don't want you to come in. Are you crazy? All right. This has been who? Critical Thinking and Common Sense with your host, Oramila Nasir Kainde. Love, peace, and hair grease.